to the StackCast episode 5. Today we have with us Alex. Introduce yourself, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm from LocalMonero and AgoraDesk. LocalMonero and AgoraDesk is a P2P trading platform. We started as just LocalMonero back in 2017, before the great crypto crash of 2017. We've survived it. We used to be Monero focused only. I mean, LocalMonero is still Monero focused only. And starting from 2019, we also expanded our platform a little bit and added AgoraDesk, which is basically a different front end over the same platform. So like the accounts you have between LocalMonero and AgoraDesk, it's the same account. You can use the same login password to get inside, and in your dashboard, you'll see all your same offers and trades and chats and everything. It's just that LocalMonero is like a brand that's focused specifically on serving the Monero market, and AgoraDesk also serves the Bitcoin market, and it's kind of like a gateway drug for Bitcoin traders to sort of discover Monero, because Monero is offered in addition to Bitcoin on AgoraDesk. So a lot of the idea was initially that a lot of people would be looking for a no KYC P2P trading platform for Bitcoin, and then they'd find AgoraDesk, and then they'd see, oh, here's this other currency that's offered on AgoraDesk, which is Monero, and that way they'll find out about Monero and get into it. So that was the basic idea, and it seems to work. A lot of people do seem to discover Monero from AgoraDesk, so turned out to be a good strategy. Yeah, that's about it.
So maybe I should be more familiar with this, and I have heard the name before, but I've honestly known nothing about the service and any connection to LocalMonero and anything like that. So I'm almost entirely in the dark when it comes to that.
Well, do you trade crypto?
Trade? No, not much. No.
I mean, not like on a day trader kind of basis, but do you like, invest in it in the sense of, do you like buy a little bit every month maybe, or maybe you try to be a part of the economy or something like that?
Yeah, not on a large scale, not on a large scale, just kind of here and there as it feels comfortable budget wise and things like that. So
Well, I mean, you're in this space, so you must be kind of on the team of let's sort of transition our economy to this new monetary system that isn't based on fiat printing, right? Or are you not part of that either?
no, I would definitely say I'm on the pro side of it. There's too much going on right now to not be considering that.
Right. So basically, being on that side, there are, of course, pragmatic considerations that it's not very easy compared to spending fiat to live off only on your crypto, right? Not a lot of places, much more than it used to be, but still, like it's a tiny percentage compared to the mass acceptance that fiat has. So it's not super easy to be like purely living the crypto life, but you can sort of try to commingle the two. You try to pay with crypto whenever a place does accept crypto, and then if you don't have a choice, if you have some essential expense and they don't accept crypto, well, you have to pay with fiat. Are you maybe practicing that kind of stuff, or you're just completely living fiat style?
I gotta say, mostly fiat. There are
I
very
see.
few services I use or places that I shop that do even accept any cryptocurrencies. I feel like I've seen much more of that traveling actually, but here not quite so much. There's like the local Bitcoin ATM at the liquor store kind of thing, but that's about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, crypto adoption in the States, given how developed of an economy the US is, on the one hand, it's kind of disappointing. And the government stance, based on the recent news, is also kind of disappointing. Though it's not entirely unsurprising given that the US central bank, the Federal Reserve, has, by virtue of being the issuer of the world's reserve currency, has a lot of inflationary potential, I guess, meaning a lot of people around the world hold US dollars, not just US citizens. So, whenever you inflate the currency, the value is sucked out from everybody who holds that currency. And whereas a country like Venezuela or Argentina or even, Germany, actually no, Germany is a bad example because the euro is also held not just by Europeans, but you know what I mean. Countries that issue currencies that are only used within their borders.
Yeah, kind of niche
They
currencies.
Well, not necessarily niche, but just like, it's there. Like you use pesos in Argentina, you use pesos in Venezuela, you use whatever, rubles in Russia, yuan in China. Whenever a currency is limited to just one country, it has sort of less inflationary potential than something like the US dollar, which is used globally because, as I've said, there's a lot of US dollar holders all around the world. So whenever the Federal Reserve wants to print more money, they have a broader base from which to suck out the value. And that gives them more room to inflate, basically, without having hyperinflationary consequences. So the US central bank stands to lose a lot. And by extension, the US government stands to lose a lot if the U.S. dollar no longer remains the world's reserve currency. So you can sort of understand why they don't want to embrace crypto to the same extent that countries that have inflationary problems, for example, want to embrace crypto, right?
Of course. And by niche, just to specify, I mean, on a global scale, when you're looking at the total circulating currency out there, size wise, just to clarify.
Right.
Well, why don't you tell me just a little bit about how you became involved with LocalMonero in the first place?
Well, I just naturally gravitate towards privacy preserving technologies, and Monero just came onto my radar, and I've noticed that there is no peer-to-peer way of acquiring Monero, because for Bitcoin there's local Bitcoins and also Paxful, and for Monero there was nothing. And to me, once I discovered Monero, like I always knew that Bitcoin wasn't really anonymous in the sense of, I mean, it can be anonymous if you manage to create a wallet that's no way tied to your identity, and then you never basically expose your identity in any way when you're using the wallet. But it's still not private because all your transactions are public and your balances are public and all that kind of stuff.
And that's going to be excessively difficult for the average person looking to potentially adopt. I mean, it's not the
Yeah,
most reasonable introduction.
right. So understanding those drawbacks, and then discovering Monero, well, to me, it seemed at that point, and it still seems today, that if we are to adopt a new monetary system, the next generation of money, we had clams, we had precious metals, now we have fiat, and what's the next step? It would seem to me that Bitcoin doesn't fit the bill because of a lack of fungibility, which in a electronic decentralized currency, if you want to have fungibility, you have to have privacy, obviously. And so Monero fits the bill where Bitcoin doesn't. Now, this doesn't mean that Monero is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of problems that we as a community still need to solve. There's some technical debt that needs to be repaid. The 10 block lock would be the most prominent example in recent memory, probably, because it's been mentioned by a person on Twitter who was at the Monerotopia conference that he had a bad first impression because he had to wait 20 minutes in order to be able to spend his Monero that he received. And this issue I've been talking about how important it is to solve this for years. But it's a difficult issue to solve. It's like there's integrity of the chain that needs to be preserved. There's a lot of privacy compromises for all the existing sort of solutions to the 10 block lock. So really it's just a question of, we need to think about this more. We need to get more smart people looking at this issue before we can actually find a viable solution to this. But this is something that we need to solve if we expect people to adopt Monero on a mass scale. But your question was, how do I get into Monero and local Monero? I'm going off on tangents. I'm trying to.
It's okay. You can carry us wherever you feel like. If we
Right.
can answer it at some point in the process, that's great. But you go wherever you want to go.
Right. So with peer-to-peer trading platforms, I don't know if you've ever used any. I assume not. But the way that it goes is that how it's different from a centralized exchange, sort of. On a centralized exchange, you open an account, and you may or may not have to go through ID verification. Nowadays, almost always you have to go through ID verification. And then you sort of trade on this kind of like stock exchange type of setup where it's like buy orders, sell orders, limit market, stop loss, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. It's treated just like stocks. That was my first foray into buying any crypto at all, was Robinhood, actually. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, peer-to-peer is kind of different. It's more like an eBay type of experience where somebody posts an offer and they take their offer, and somebody else looks at that offer and then they respond to it, and then they settle the payment, and then the buyer gets the coins, right? So it's a very it's a very organic way, I guess, of trading crypto or anything in general. And almost always you have a level of privacy preservation that you'll never find on a centralized exchange. You're sort of dealing with just another person like you. It's not a gigantic business like a centralized exchange is that has to hire a fleet of lawyers, to process KYC documents and everything. It's just another dude or girl. And they offer you whatever payment method that you're familiar with. It can be Cash App, can be cash by mail. Could be something else that, you discuss between each other. Oh, can I pay you by meeting you at a Starbucks, or can I pay you with like a postal order, or can I just, well, it's very flexible in that sense, just like you would on eBay or Craigslist, have that kind of flexibility by talking to the person directly. And that way, number one, you support the peer-to-peer economy. Number two, you preserve your privacy in a way that you'd never be able to do on a centralized exchange. Number three, if you become a seller on this kind of platform, you can actually earn yourself a decent living, because there is arbitrage opportunities, meaning that you might buy from a centralized exchange, and then you can resell it on the peer-to-peer market, and then you can pocket the difference, give yourself a couple of percentage of profit margin or something like that. And by doing this, you're also helping people who, for some reason, don't want to use a centralized exchange. If they don't feel comfortable with the KYC, which I totally think everybody should not feel comfortable with KYC. Or if they, for example, if you're in a less developed country, a lot of people don't have access to banking. They don't have access maybe to the sorts of payment processing services that people in the West are used to. So for them, doing a bank transfer to a centralized exchange is just not an option. And instead, they would much prefer, meeting up or sending cash or finding some other non-standard way of paying you. And then by posting an offer on a peer-to-peer trading platform, you're helping those people acquire their financial sovereignty. You can see this happening a lot in regions like Nigeria. You can just in the so-called global South in general. This is a big sort of sector that is very underserved by the centralized exchange industry, and they don't seem to be particularly interested in serving that market as well. So yeah, peer-to-peer serves those people as well. And finally, it's just an alternative, to this centralized exchange quasi-monopoly over the off-ramp and on-ramp to and from crypto. We don't want to have these 6 or 7 gatekeepers globally that process all the payments to and from crypto. It's much better to have alternative options, decentralized options, so that there's no one choke point, to shut down in case there is some kind of global coordinated government action to try to stop the global adoption of cryptocurrencies.
All right. So may I ask what exactly do you do with LocalMonero specifically?
I'm the co-founder. I can't get into the specifics of what I do. We keep everything within our staff, what we do, and just the back end details under wraps
No
for
worries.
security purposes.
So going from there, how, I guess you kind of touched on this earlier, but how did AgoraDesk, am I saying that correctly? That's how I say it in my head.
Well, I say it AgoraDesk, and I think Agra is the correct English accent for saying it, though I'm a language descriptivist. I'm not a prescriptivist, so I think whatever way you say it is the right way.
I may be saying that wrong, but I can say AgoraDesk too. But so how did like you began to get into earlier, excuse me, how did that kind of come to be from LocalMonero?
Well, in 2019, Paxful and Local Bitcoins announced that they were going to impose platform-wide KYC. And just to reiterate, Local Bitcoins and Paxful were the sort of original peer-to-peer trading platforms for Bitcoin. Local Bitcoin specifically is like the grandfather of the whole peer-to-peer crypto trading industry, basically. So we're all kind of following in their footsteps, whether it's Paxful or LocalMonero or all the other companies in the space. We've all sort of took lessons from how Local Bitcoins did it. And so in 2019, both Paxful and Local Bitcoins announced that they will start doing KYC. They will start doing mandatory ID verification on all their users. Well, they started by saying we'll just do it for the sellers, and then after that they've expanded it from not just the sellers, but to the buyers as well, effectively making everybody required to go through KYC. And at that point, we're like, oh, I mean, unfortunately, the grandfather of the industry no longer provides the sort of mission, no longer accomplishes the mission that it was here to accomplish in the first place. So we might as well fill in those shoes, and that's why we decided to expand into AgoraDesk or see, now I'm now I'm saying it, AgoraDesk. So yeah, we've decided, well, why leave the no KYC peer-to-peer segment for Bitcoin unserved, and at the same time introduce them to Monero by having both cryptos available on the platform. So it was kind of a two birds, one stone situation. Yep.
So those are kind of the main differences then right there.
Between
between something like LocalMonero versus AgoraDesk.
The only difference in terms of the only difference is that AgoraDesk shows two base assets instead of one. So LocalMonero only supports Monero as the base asset for all the trades on the platform, whereas AgoraDesk supports both Monero and Bitcoin. But both, as I said, share the same sort of back-end platform. It's the same account that's shared between the two. It's the same offers. You know, if you see a Monero offer posted on AgoraDesk, you will be able to find that exact same offer on LocalMonero as well, but not vice versa, right? Because if there is vice versa in terms of Monero, but not in terms of Bitcoin. So if you have a Bitcoin offer posted on AgoraDesk, that won't be visible on LocalMonero, because LocalMonero is just like strictly Monero only for the purists, right? And people appreciate that. You know, not everybody wants to have a platform that supports a million different assets. They like the simplicity of just, coming to a Monero specifically focused platform. Stack also has the same.
I was just about to point it out. It's just like the I guess same version, but with Stack Duo. Excuse me.
Exactly.
I worded that a little funny,
yeah.
but I can see where you're going with that.
Right. And this is good practice, because trying to shove everything into one platform is good for some of your users, but not for all of your users. So if you have a specific niche that you're serving, and in our case it's Monero users with LocalMonero, it's good to have a product that's focused on the niche. While if you want to expand into other sectors, you can have just a parallel product that serves those other sectors. So that's what we're doing.
And I'm personally a big proponent of just choice in general. That there doesn't have to be a single universal solution to everything. That's just kind of my personal way of thinking. So I appreciate things like that as well. So I can always respect that.
No, thank you.
So getting into business in the crypto space in the first place, how challenging was that from your perspective? And what would you say to anyone else potentially looking to kind of get into this space in the first place from a business side?
I'd say, well, there's obviously a lot of risk involved. This is a very risky business because the assets go up and down. The volatility is huge. It's very difficult to find any sort of investors that would be willing to take those kinds of risks with you. It's very difficult to get institutional assistance in terms of banking, or it's getting easier nowadays, but back when we started, it was way harder. But still, there is an institutional bias against crypto for now. So really, you have to be very self-reliant in that sense. You have to be able to withstand these sorts of waves of volatility. And there's also the constant threat of cyber attacks that happen all the time. Because if you're a crypto business, you automatically become a target
Oh yeah.
for cyber attackers, because they expect that they'll be able to ransom you. They expect to break into your system and try to steal something from you. It's not the same as running, let's say, a news website where, I mean, sure, a cyber attacker can DDoS you, right? Denial of service, and keep your website offline and demand payment to sort of stop the attack. But you should obviously never pay any attacker that ever comes across your business, whether it's a crypto business or any other online business. If you're being targeted by people who want ransom from you, by paying the ransom, all you're doing is you're just opening yourself up for further attacks, right? There's no incentive for the attacker to actually stop attacking you if you pay them. And
There's no reason for them not to come back and kind of continue making you cash cow sorts.
what I wanted to say is, if you pay them once, well, then you become their bitch. You'll never be able to shake that again. So you have to never pay, never give in, don't negotiate with them. Just if you're under attack, if you don't know how to defend yourself, find a cybersecurity expert who can help you. And it might cost you money to hire a cybersecurity expert. It might cost you money to purchase the necessary services that you need to purchase in order to have your website be able to withstand attacks. And it might even seem like a lot of money, but if it's a business that is worth saving, then you should be paying that money. And it's unfortunate that this is the situation that we have to find ourselves in. It's unfortunate that there are bad people on the internet that can exploit this. But that's just the nature of reality. We can lament about how it sucks, but we have to deal with it. So you have to be prepared for that as a person who's starting a business in the crypto industry. Yeah.
And what about maybe someone looking specifically at providing a more privacy focused service? Is there any kind of difference there, do you think?
I think if you're providing a privacy focused service, you have to know what you're doing, because privacy tech is not trivial. There's a lot of things you need to think about. There's a lot of vectors that you need to cover when you're trying to protect somebody's privacy. So you really should be an expert in these sorts of things. Or if you're not an expert, you have to find a partner into your business that is also an expert in such things. If you're the kind of person who wants to start a privacy-focused business, I would assume that you were this sort of privacy-conscious person from the get-go, because I like it doesn't. I don't think that somebody that doesn't have the sort of natural intuition of being privacy conscious, and not everybody has that intuition. A lot of people, they really don't care about their privacy, even if you talk to them about it. Even if you educate them with the risks that are associated with not maintaining your privacy. Even if you're doing nothing wrong, even if you have nothing to hide, all that kind of stuff. Just the human rights aspect of it, and just the the potential risks of being target of mass surveillance, and we've all heard the stories of these people that had accounts on Google or iCloud and something like that, and then through some mistakes, I guess, in the automatic sort of detection algorithms that these big tech companies run on their user data, they get like reported to the police even though they're completely innocent, and then their life, just turns upside down. They have to go through years of court cases to clear their name, and even then, it's very hard to completely clear your name, because when somebody Googles your name, the first thing they'll see is that you've been accused of something, and they'll not necessarily see the fact that you've been cleared of all charges. So it's just better to, from a quality of life standpoint, it's better to maintain your privacy than it is to completely surrender your privacy. But some people, despite however many examples you give them, however you explain it to them, they just don't feel the need. They're totally okay with having their entire life be online and public and everything.
Well, because it's never going to be them in their minds, right? It happens, but
Yeah,
not to
yeah.
me always.
Right, right. And hopefully they're right. Hopefully nothing will happen to them. It's they're adults, and they have the right to make that decision for themselves. So
Just informed. What's the term here? I don't think it's quite informed consent, I suppose, but that's the closest thing I can think of. Informed risk taking, I suppose.
yeah, personal responsibility, informed risk, yeah, risk tolerance.
Yeah.
So I assume that sort of a person that doesn't have that intuition of wanting to maximize their privacy preservation, I assume that kind of person would never want to start a sort of privacy preserving type business, or a business that caters to people who want to preserve their privacy. I assume that the kind of person who would start that business would be a person with that kind of an intuition. And usually that kind of person would, throughout their life, seek out content that educates them about privacy preserving technologies and practices, right?
That would be ideal.
So, right, so-called OPSEC, operational security. So I really don't have advice specific to a person who wants to start a business that provides tools or services for people to preserve their privacy, because there's so many angles to approach that question. And I'm sure that if you have that intuition, you know exactly what you need to do.
And then what steps do you take to ensure user privacy?
So on LocalMonero and AgoraDesk, they both share the exact same privacy features.
I assumed,
Well,
yeah.
apart from, I guess, the fact that AgoraDesk supports Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is inherently a problematic privacy technology. But apart from that, we have a couple of measures that separates us from the crowd, makes us more privacy focused than our competition, and even not our competition, just as a general benchmark for any online service. We do a lot. So number one, we have a Tor portal, Onion, so you can use the Tor browser to access our website, as well as an I2P portal, or EAP site, also known as I2P, or the Invisible Internet Protocol. It's kind of like Tor. Have you heard of I2P?
I've heard of, yeah, by name. Do I know much about it myself? Not personally, no.
Have you used Tor before?
Yes.
Right. So it's kind of like Tor, except way slower. And
That's rough.
and
It's already
yeah,
not
that's
the
rough.
fastest.
and also way less stable. But it's also considered by some to be more secure than Tor. Now, I'm not going to comment on whether that's correct or not because I don't have the expertise to make that judgment. It may be true. But whatever the case is, if you prefer Tor, you can use Tor to access our website. If you prefer I2P, you can use I2P to access our website.
Choices again. Very nice.
Choices, yeah. And also, I2P doesn't have access to the so-called ClearNet. So if you use the Tor browser, you can also load non-Tor websites. Whereas on I2P, you can't. You can only use I2P websites on I2P. In addition to that, we have what's called the no.js mode, no JavaScript. So you can, when you're loading our website through Tor or I2P, that is the default mode how the website is loaded. There is no JavaScript loaded into your browser when you load our website in no.js mode. JavaScript is perhaps, are you familiar with the concept of attack surface?
No, I don't think so, no.
So, imagine, you remember that battle with the 300 Spartans in the, what was it, Thermopylae? I forgot the name. Right. So
I can't tell
like,
you the right name either, but I know what you're talking about, I think.
right. There was like a bunch of Persians, right? A lot of them. And then there were only 300 Spartans, and they could hold out this tiny little choke point in between like two canyons or whatever it was. I forgot the detail, but the point is, it was like a pretty narrow choke point that you could hold down with only 300 men in order to withstand a lot of Persians attacking you. And that's sort of in cybersecurity, if your application, well, actually, it's not applicable just to cybersecurity, but it's also in cybersecurity. If your application has a very narrow sort of area that is vulnerable to attack, then that application is considered to have the property of a small attack surface.
So the just
So those
size of the potential vulnerability, or I guess quantity of potential vulnerability points. Is that what you're saying?
right. So if you only have like one choke point that you need to hold, you can withstand a lot more attacks, and it's much more difficult for an attacker to bypass your defenses. If you have a house that is completely walled on all sides, no windows, and it just has like one entry door, right? Then if somebody wants to penetrate your house, they have to get through that door. So if you can secure that door, then your house is secure. However, if you have a bunch of doors all around your house, if you have windows, if you have a skylight, if you have all these, if you have a chimney, if you have all these different entry points into your house, it becomes more difficult to secure your house. So this means that for example, you would say that for every window you add to your house, you are increasing your attack surface. For every window and door that you're removing from your house design, you are reducing the attack surface, right? So that's the concept of attack surface. Now, in the browser, the way that the user gets compromised on a browser is almost always through the use of JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is this language that is executed inside of the browser whenever you load a web page. Usually, all modern web pages will have JavaScript, because JavaScript allows a website developer to sort of add interactivity to the website. It gives you all these cool features you can do.
I may or may not remember when a lot of HTML websites were switching over to JavaScript. So I can,
Right.
yeah.
So you're familiar.
Yes.
Right. Now, HTML also has some interactivity. Like, for example, HTML has forms where you type in something into a field and then you click submit and then it sends it off to the backend, right? That's also interactivity. But the interactivity in HTML is very limited. And it's also sort of the attack surface is basically non-existent, right? There's no way, almost no way, to exploit a client that is using a no JavaScript website. And this exploit can not just be a security type of exploit in the sense of, you know, an attacker that's trying to take over your computer, right? But it can also be like a privacy exploit. Like, for example, you can use JavaScript to more easily figure out the true IP of a person that's loading the website. So even if you're accessing through a VPN, even if you're accessing through Tor, if there's JavaScript on the website that executes, you know, a specific type of code, that code might actually leak your true IP address. And people generally aren't aware, but whenever you're using a no JavaScript website, you know, the attacks are it's like switching from a gigantic mansion that has a window, 5 million windows, 3,000 doors. You know, you're switching to this underground bunker, nuclear fallout shelter, you know, that has this one very thick door that is basically impenetrable.
Okay.
So that's Node.js mode. And Node.js mode, like, relatively rare in on the modern web, and it takes a lot of resources for us to develop, you know, a website that is actually usable without any JavaScript. And we take that time and we do it because we consider it very important as a privacy preserving technology. A lot of websites can have a Tor portal, but Node.js is very rare in terms of privacy preserving.
So
One
what
other
are the
thing we do.
websites mostly developed in?
Oh, they use JavaScript, basically.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant specifically Monero, and
Oh,
AgoraDesk.
Monero. Well, the LocalMonero AgoraDesk websites, they do have a JavaScript version of the website. But if you want to use the no JavaScript version, it's just
Exactly.
HTML.
Just
Yeah, it's
HTML.
just HTML. That's right. And CSS, of course, you know, the style sheets,
Yes.
the thing that makes it look nice.
I've learned, about this much when I've gone to try to spend a little extra time trying to pick up new skills and stuff like that. But it's very, surface level understanding. But I'm following so far. We're good.
Nice. One other thing we do is we have open source mobile applications to use our website. So to use our platform, actually, you don't use a mobile app to use the website. um, the reason it's open source is that it allows you to audit the code and make sure that there's no funny business happening. You know, there's nothing that's being stolen from your phone. There's nothing that we're tracking. There's no security exploits. And if there are any security exploits that we're not aware of, you know, it's much easier for people to discover them and tell us about them so that we can fix them if our code is available for anybody to see. So that kind of ties into this Node.js for the web users, and then you have an open source app for the mobile users, right? This way you're kind of sort of achieving the same level of security, privacy, auditability between somebody who wants to access the platform through web or through their mobile device.
And then what platforms are the apps available on right now?
Android and iOS. And of course, for Android, you have a lot of options, right? On Apple, you just have the App Store. But on Android, you can use the official Google Play Store. You can use F-Droid, which is a sort of Play Store alternative that ships only open source applications.
Yes.
Not only do they ship only open source applications, they actually build the applications from the source code by themselves whenever they publish an application on F-Droid. So
Really? Okay,
in
I
order,
didn't know
yeah,
that. That's interesting.
yeah, and it's not sufficient simply to have your source code be available somewhere like on GitHub or something for them to publish your app on F-Droid. The app actually has to compile, and they're the ones that are doing the compiling. They have this like automated compilation system that pulls the source code from your repository and then compiles it, and then the app bundle that they themselves have compiled is what is available for download on F-Droid.
So they make
That's
sure
a
that
very good
everything
approach.
is fully replicable.
Exactly. Yeah, fully replicable, and that the code that is shown is the code that runs on your device. You know, that it's not just that maybe a company publishes their code, but then when they compile the app, you know, they compile some modification of that code, and then they give the modified bundle to F-Droid. No, that's not how it works. F-Droid actually compiles the code themselves, so you know that what you're running is exactly what the repository is showing.
That makes sense. That's actually a very good idea. And I had just kind of never considered that. But if, of course, that would be the kind of best standard to have on an app store like F-Droid. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's a tough standard. You know that it's very difficult to get your system working with their system. It's not very streamlined. It's a bit, you know, it's a bit hacky to get it to work. So that's why you don't see a lot of apps that are open source get published on F-Droid, because whoever's developing those open source apps just either didn't have the time to get it to work with the F-Droid compilation system, or they just didn't bother. They just instead decided to host their own F-Droid repository, which is not the official F-Droid server from which you get the apps by default, but like a custom one that you add that allows you to ship apps, ship your own bundles to people who manually added your repository. So you don't get the same sort of guarantees as you do whenever you install it from the main repository, where you know that it was compiled from the source code. An
And I'm
additional
guessing your
thing,
apps are available through the main repo.
yeah, we're on the main repo. That's right.
Okay.
And in addition to that, we also have a manual APK download for Android users. So if you don't want to use Google Play, or if you don't want to use F-Droid, you can just download the app bundle file and then just install it manually. Now this is especially useful for people who are in sort of censored jurisdictions, firewall jurisdictions that may have like Google blocked, F-Droid blocked, and so they can just share this little bundle, or they can download it from GitHub, or you know, however, and they'll be able to install the application itself. And if you install it through the bundle, you also get an automatic updater that is built into the bundle, so that you don't have to worry about updates either.
All right. So you're kind of all over the place right now, then.
Yeah.
Easy to find.
Also, some other privacy features that I forgot to mention was we don't have any trackers in the app. We have like crash diagnostics, but you can opt out of them. Our apps were tested on Graphene OS. I don't know if you know Graphene OS.
Another, familiar in conversation, but no experience with it personally, kind of thing.
Right. Well, you have the default sort of Android operating system that ships that gets shipped by Google. You also have like different flavors that brands sort of create for their own phones. Like Samsung has their own little modification of Android. LG has their own. Everybody has their own little version of Android. Graphene OS is also a modification of the Android open source project that sort of hardens your phone for security and privacy. It's a very, very sophisticated project. The developers behind it are probably one of the best, if not the best people in terms of the open source privacy and security development. So, if you're the kind of person who values your privacy on your phone, you should be using Graphene OS, in my opinion. Also, we have the website itself works completely without access to Google services. A lot of websites nowadays, they use Google Analytics and that kind of stuff to track performance metrics and all that stuff. We don't have any of that. So if you block Google, it's all good. Site works fine, and we have no email required at registration.
That's
which
rare.
is yeah, that's pretty rare. Reddit used to have that, and then Reddit stopped doing that, unfortunately. But yeah, apart from us, can't think of really any other service in the space that has accounts but doesn't require email to register. Let me think. What else do we have? There's no KYC enforced on the platform, obviously. Now, individual sellers may enforce KYC. So if you're the kind of seller that provides a reversible payment method, like, for example, PayPal, right? In a PayPal transfer, the buyer can reverse the transfer. They can claim that it's fraud or something. They can. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. PayPal almost always will reverse the transfer without much deliberation. So those kinds of payment methods, they are pretty risky for sellers. So they try to screen their buyers in some way, either by asking for ID or maybe asking to verify their phone number, or maybe by asking to send an email that's the same email as the one that's connected to their PayPal account, or stuff like that. They have their own ways of trying to make sure that they don't get scammed, they don't get a payment reversal. So individual sellers, they may enforce KYC. And if you're using a high-risk reversible payment method, it's a pretty high chance that every seller will be asking for KYC because they need to protect themselves from this sort of scam. But if you're using irreversible payment methods, if you're using cash-based payment methods, for example, or if you're using Cash App, which is technically reversible, but in practice, it's almost never reversed. The Cash App transactions are pretty irreversible. Then you'll probably never encounter any KYC from the sellers. So, that's obviously a privacy preserving aspect right there. Let me think. What else do we have? I think I've mentioned. Yeah, I think I've mentioned everything that's the most important parts. So.
And to
Yeah.
backtrack just a second, you mentioned not using anything Google related like Google Analytics. Do you use any other tracking services on the websites?
Well, we have a self-hosted analytics that we use for basic metrics. So just like page views and stuff like that, and it's nowhere near the same level of I don't want to say sophistication, but invasiveness. There we go. It's nowhere near the same level of invasiveness as Google Analytics is. It's very basic information. And if you're using the Tor or the I2P version of the website, or if you're using the Node.js version of the website, which you can use not just on Tor and I2P, but also in the ClearNet, you can also disable JavaScript. So if you're using the Node.js version of the website, then there's no analytics at all. So it's totally opt out. in that sense.
And the analytics that you were mentioning, I mean, that's no third party service, it sounds like, anyway, correct?
No, no, it's not a third party service. Yeah, we host it ourselves. Yeah.
Okay, I thought that's what I heard. I just wanted to double check there.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you covered just about every base possible.
Yeah, we try to be thorough. It's very difficult to be thorough because there's always something, that can leak somewhere. It's very difficult to plug this everywhere. That's just the nature of information technology. It's very leaky.
Of course, but
But
even trying to take those steps in the first place and keeping an eye out for what else you could maybe implement to continue to tighten security and privacy a little bit, that's even kind of rare. So,
yeah, well, we pride ourselves on being that service, on trying to break those sort of benchmarks of privacy and security that other websites perhaps don't pay enough attention to. And you know like a lot of businesses, they tend to think that you need to have like invasive analytics in order to be able to grow your business properly and maintain the competitive edge or whatever. We don't think that that's the case. We think you can run a business that's also privacy preserving, that is profitable. So yeah.
it's difficult from a marketing perspective because that's how I came into my position with CipherStack at the first place. It's difficult to learn about all these things and the uses and kind of perks of data gathering and analytics and stuff like that, and then turn around and have to kind of almost throw all of that out the window because in this kind of space you can't really get away with using stuff like that, and it's kind of antithetical to the sort of overall philosophy in the first place. So trying to get a good feel for your user base or clientele, and further yourself business wise in a privacy focused space is like very much hard mode, I feel like, because you do not have the same tools at your disposal because you're choosing not to use them. So I feel like that's just a whole different experience.
Yeah, it is hard mode, but it's the kind of hard mode that you enjoy, like Dark Souls.
Yeah, good reference. But while I have you here still, is there anything else that maybe we didn't jump into today that you'd like to make sure that you can shout out here?
Well, I just want to shout out that, if you've never tried to use a peer-to-peer platform before, come on down LocalMonero, come on down AgoraDesk, whichever you prefer, Bitcoin or Monero. It's super simple. It really, I mean, like you'll be in and out in 20 minutes. If you're using something like Cash App, for example, you just open the homepage, sign up, just a username and password, no email required. Get your Cash App offer. Type in the amount you want to buy. The seller will provide you with instructions on how to pay. You make the payment, and it immediately gets sent to the wallet that you input when you open the trade. So it's not like an exchange where, when you buy some crypto, it's like it's on your exchange account, and then you need to withdraw from the exchange account to your own personal wallet. Instead, the way that LocalMonero and AgoraDesk operates is that when you open the trade, you input the wallet address of where you want the coins to be sent to when the trade is finalized. It's called a non-custodial settlement. And as soon as you pay the Cash App, for example, to the seller pushes the finalize button, and then you will get the coins directly to your Stack Duo or whatever wallet you're using. and it's like 20 minutes in and out. Super simple.
Not too bad.
And you'll
And is
preserve
that
your
20
privacy.
minutes including, you're including, setting up your account and everything there, correct?
Yeah, I'm including everything, like start to finish, from opening the website and until getting the coins. I'd say it's about 20 minutes. Yes.
And just, random question to throw out there while it's on my mind. How difficult is it maybe to integrate services like this into other applications like wallets?
The way that I envision an integration into a wallet, for example, would be to have sort of like a button where you can, for example, if you have some Bitcoin on your wallet and you want to convert it to US dollars, for example, you have a convert button that you push, and then it would open a screen with the available AgoraDesk offers for converting Bitcoin into US dollars. You can select your payment method. For example, let's use the same Cash App, and you'll see the Cash App offers. You can pick, the first available offer that you see with the best price, or maybe you can pick an offer with a bit of a higher price, but that has maybe a more reputable seller, because different sellers, they have a different amount of trades that they've done on the platform. Some sellers have only done like 100 trades, other sellers have done 1,000 trades. Now, it doesn't mean that the seller with 100 trades is going to scam you and the seller with 1,000 trades is not going to scam you, or something like that. Generally, if somebody has fewer trades, it just means that they've been on the platform for a smaller amount of time. But often someone who has a lot of trades under their belt, they have a more smooth customer experience because they've dealt with a lot more traders. So they might be more helpful. They might be more accommodating. They might guide you through the steps in greater detail, stuff like that, right? Just like you would expect, for example, an experienced customer support representative, right, to be more helpful than like a newbie customer support representative. In the same way, you can expect a seller with a lot of trades to be more helpful and have the process be more streamlined than a less experienced trader. But in both cases, whether it's an experienced trader or inexperienced trader, you're always protected by the arbitration protection system that we have on our platform, meaning that whenever a trade is opened, there's this thing we have called an arbitration bond. So the seller has to post a bond, a security deposit essentially, that is equivalent to the sum of the trade that you are opening with them. So there's no way for the seller to just take your money and run, because if they do that, if they become unresponsive and just go leave the platform, then our staff can step in and arbitrate. Look at the evidence, whether the payment has been made. If the seller is unresponsive and all that kind of stuff, and then make a decision. And if necessary, the security deposit, will be awarded to you, which is the equivalent of the sum of the trade that you would have gotten anyway. So because of this system in place, nobody tries to do anything stupid, right? Because they know if they try to do something stupid, they'll just end up in a dispute situation.
And that
And
deposit you mentioned, who is supplying that?
the seller,
Okay.
right?
Again, this
So,
may be very obvious, but it's still fairly new to me. There's always something, probably a lot really to gather from each of these episodes so far. I know only that kind of extends to what I've directly worked with. So,
well, I hope you can try our platform someday. We're always very interested in hearing feedback from people that aren't used to this kind of system and are new to this space. because
Absolutely. And
whatever.
it's actually been something on my mind to kind of look into a little bit more of the more private options, basically, compared to, like I mentioned earlier, the Robinhoods and stuff, where how I kind of got into making any crypto purchases in the first place. I know I don't want to use those anymore, and yet I have not carved out the time to do enough research into this to, you know, choose a service and actually start investing a little bit more. So this is very good to learn about for me personally.
Right. Well, uh, Diego has my Telegram and my Matrix contact, so he can provide that to you if you need any help at all using the platform. You can just ask me directly. We also have a huge community of traders on a Telegram group. There's a at LocalMonero, at AgoraDesk. There's two groups. Very helpful people there. If you have any questions. But yeah, I'd love to see you try it, and I'd love to see what sort of, if you can find something that was unclear to you or some minor inconveniences, whatever it is, we'd love to hear it, and we really want to make it as streamlined and as simple as possible.
Definitely. And I already kind of have things pulled up on the computer right now, right in front of me behind this window. So as soon as we're finished here, I'll probably do a little digging around and see how that goes, actually.
Okay, I'm excited.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for spending, gosh, it's been, I think, over an hour now talking with
Yep,
me.
it's been a pleasure, Alexa.
Hopefully, it didn't take up too much of your day. I'm not sure where you're based. You sound like you're US or Canada, I would think, but either way, hopefully it's not too late where you are digging into dinner time or anything like that.
All good.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for episode 5 here. Again, thank you so much. And for any viewers, I will, if you stick around, see you for the next episode. Thanks for hanging in here for another one.